plenty of time to be able to do a presentation. So
I took that from last week too.
Let me introduce to you Dr. Mary Ann Janosik. I'm going to let her talk. Yeah, I've been working on that name all day. I'm going to let her tell you all a little bit about herself and then do her presentation. Please don't forget that at the end when we do questions, if you have a question, please use your microphone and make sure you introduce yourself, even though we all know you, she doesn't, and that might help her as she goes through her question answering. So thank you guys very much.
Thank you, Penny. Good afternoon. Oh, come on. Let's try that one again. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
All right, much better, much better. Get the energy up at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Thank you all for coming, and for those of you who are streaming, good afternoon to all of you, and to those of you who will be watching this later, good evening. Thank you all for making time this afternoon and for this presentation. Penny asked me to tell you a little bit about myself first, so the short version is I'm currently the interim vice president for academic affairs at another SUNY institution at Hudson Valley Community College. And prior to coming to upstate New York, in this region, I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio. I started my career in higher education as a faculty member, and I have since then moved to the dark side, as some people have told me, and I've had various administrative positions. I've been a division dean at a community college, a campus dean for Ohio University. I've been a provost, and provost for the state of South Carolina, and a head of school at Stanford University's online high school, which is a virtual school for the gifted and talented. So a sort of maybe peripatetic existence to some of you, but one that I hope brings this afternoon a way for you to get to know me a little bit better, to know a little bit more about the breadth of my experiences and what I hope I can bring to SUNY Erie. I should tell you that in my momentary lapse of reason from higher education, I was the education director at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for 2 years. So that's either the cool factor or the factor, depending on what you think of rock and roll. But at any rate, you know, putting a microphone in my hand in the afternoon, you know, could be a dangerous thing. Anyway, let's get started. I was asked to give a presentation that would demonstrate a little bit about my version or my vision for the SUNY Erie Cares initiative that is currently ongoing and how I would build a student life cycle model. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that this afternoon. And let me just say this in prefacing the PowerPoint. There are only 11 more slides. I don't like text-heavy PowerPoints, so I'm going to fill in the gaps a little bit, and hopefully that will allow for some questions later on. And also just to say this, I think it's wonderful to have a vision. I think it's wonderful to come into a position with an idea of the work that lies ahead. But I give this to you and I share this with you this afternoon as a template, as an example. It is not Mary Ann's view of the world or Mary Ann's sense of how we ought to do things. It is based on the experiences I've had, the initiatives that I've worked on that have been successful, and the way in which this might fit into your initiative at SUNY. So none of this is cast in stone or set in stone, it's an idea. And hopefully that will stimulate some thought and some discussion this afternoon. So I started with this acronym, CARES, and I've talked a little bit about this already with the search committee, and I've had a couple of weeks to think about it now. And not only are the words really important and really critical, but I like the fact that CARES is bookended with compassion and students first. I like it that the C and the S really form the basis for that acronym. And that's what I hope as we talk a little bit about this afternoon. We'll keep coming back to those two ideas, that students are first, no matter what your role is on campus. And we deal with students, we deal with each other, we deal with the community with compassion. And in between all of that, we need to be accountable for what we do, because if what we do is being done well, we need to know that. We need to be able to share that. And if what we're doing needs work and needs to be tweaked or needs to be rethought, we need to know that. We need to be accountable. Accountability for me is a very empowering word. It shouldn't be a word that frightens. It should be a word that we embrace and say, yes, this is how we know we do the job that we're doing. We need to be relevant culturally. Anywhere you are, no matter where you are, no matter where your school is, you need to understand your community. You need to understand your students. You need to understand the greater community outside of the college campus. And you need to provide not just courses, but opportunities, activities, and events that speak to that community in every possible way. And then, of course, excellence. If you're doing all of these things well, that word comes at almost at the very end that says that's what you're doing. But again, it leads to students first. So either way you look at it. So I have presented this diagram as a linear kind of a version of CARES. We're going to look at it in a little different way later on in the presentation. But think about that. Those words are very meaningful. And for me as a candidate coming to interview for a position like this, it says a lot to me about the campus, that this is a goal, this is a priority, and this is an initiative that the campus is working on. So, what strategies can we use to make that student lifestyle model function according to the CARES acronym? I think I need to use my mouse on this, don't I? All right, let's see if we can take a moment here. Some of you may know this scene. It's from Dead Poets
Get away
Society.
that easy. Picture of Uncle Walt up there. What does he remind you of? Don't think. Answer. Go on.
A madman.
What kind of madman? Don't think about it. Just answer again.
A crazy madman.
Oh, you can do better than that. Free up your mind. Use your imagination. Say the first thing that pops into your head, even if it's total gibberish. Go on.
A sweaty-toothed madman.
Good God, boy. There's a poet in you after all. There. Close your eyes. Close your eyes. Close them. Now, describe what you see.
I close my eyes.
Yes?
And this image floats beside me.
The sweaty-toothed madman.
The sweaty-toothed madman with a stare that pounds my brain.
Oh, that's excellent. Now, give him action. Make him do something.
His hands reach out and choke me.
That's good. Wonderful, wonderful.
And all the time he's mumbling.
What's he mumbling?
Mumbling truth.
Yeah.
Truth like a blanket that always leaves your feet cold.
Forget them. Stay with the blanket. Tell me about that blanket.
You push it, stretch it, it'll never be enough. You kick at it, beat it, it'll never cover any of us. From the moment we enter crying to the moment we leave dying, it'll just cover your face as you wail and cry and scream.
Don't you forget this.
Okay. Whenever I used to teach, let's see if we can advance here. Hold on. I wasn't anticipating the foot there, so let's see. Advance. There we go. All right. So what strategies can we use? Whenever I see that scene, I used to show that scene when I taught teacher preparation. Because whenever I see that scene, and I don't wind up crying, it reminds me of what an education can do, what a school can do, what a teacher can do, what a student can gain. That 2 minutes is absolutely inspiring. And when I think about SUNY Cares and what we can do, that's the kind of life model for students that we need to think about. So, what strategies can we use to inspire? Well, there are a couple of things. One of it is don't think. Maybe don't overthink. Just answer. What does he say at the beginning of that scene? He says, don't think, just let it go. What is it that we know we need to do for students? So don't overthink it, just answer. Use your imagination. Sometimes we forget to do that when we're doing strategic planning. Sometimes we get really enmeshed in what we're used to doing, or we're afraid that if we make a change, it won't work. And so we don't use our imagination. But you'll never get to that other side of SUNY Cares if you don't try that. Free your mind. Whenever I talk about strategic planning with staff, I always begin with the first question, what do you want? What do you want to have happen? What's your wish list? What does it look like? And it's amazing how usually the response I'll get is, another wish list. We'll never get it. But if you make a good wish list, and if you start tying that wish list to your initiatives, to your goals, to the college's mission, you'll find that many of the things from that wish list will not fall off, they will stay on. And they'll actually have meaning. So think about it, free your mind a little bit. And always remember that no matter what we do, it'll never be enough. That's not a pessimistic statement, that's actually an optimistic one, because it's the thing that motivates us to keep coming back and doing more. Nothing we do here is perfect. And there isn't one way to do anything. But if we think about what's best for our students, if we think about what's best for the college, we always come back to that idea of SUNY Cares, because that's what that means. All right, 3 critical issues facing higher education in the next 10 years. You've heard this before: enrollment, resources, technology. Not just here, but everywhere. Are we retaining our students? At community colleges, persistence is as important as retention. Are we retaining them from semester to semester, not just from year to year? What does that look like? I had a conversation this afternoon, and we talked about the idea that at community colleges, you often have students who come for a semester, and that's it. They go back to the workforce. Maybe they come to get a skill development series of courses. Maybe they come to take some gen ed classes, but they leave. Is that a failure? If that's what they really wanted to do in the first place. If they wanted to come here for 1 semester and take 3 gen ed courses, and they did that, and they were successful, and they went back to the workplace, that's a success. How do we capture that? How do we measure that with retention and persistence? Do we have the resources to do that? Resources can come in a number of ways: grants, institutional advancement, tuition, but what about human resources? What about the resources that we provide for students academically, socially, and emotionally? If we're really a compassionate institution, if SUNY really cares, the resources go far beyond the grant money. It has to do with how you use your resources and whether you're using them in the best way possible for students. And then, of course, technology. I spent a little bit of time on the SUNY Erie website the last few weeks, and one of the things I looked at were online program offerings. And one of the things that we'll talk about a little bit later on is, what are you doing with online teaching and learning? You have about 10 degree granting programs that are online, either completely or partially online. As you look forward to the next 5 to 10 years, what should that look like? When I look at SUNY Cares, and the assignment I was given for this afternoon is, what would you do in the 2nd year? My question is, what would you do in the next 5 years? And what would you do in the next 10? Because if you really want to address the issues of enrollment, resources, and technology, you have to start thinking 10 years out. What is that student going to look like 10 years from now? And what are those student needs going to be? And how will this college be able to meet those needs? So, where to begin? By the way, I did visit the SUNY Erie Facebook page. So some of these images come from that page. I hope that's okay. So where to begin? Not when they enter the door as 18-year-olds, much earlier than that. One of the things that I have done in my career in various administrative positions is to reach out to local communities. I know you have a relationship with the Buffalo Public School System. Beyond that, think about establishing relationships with K-12 schools. When I was in Ohio, I created a consortium for all of the superintendents in our school district that were in our service region. And through that initiative, we developed a number of initiatives for students so that we would begin to get them to think about the idea of college. Most of the students, I was at Ohio University's Lancaster campus, or Lancaster if you're from Ohio, in Lancaster if you're from Pennsylvania. I learned there are different iterations, pronunciations of that. But most of our students were first generation. Most of our students decided by the time they were 15 if they were going to college. So by the time they were juniors and seniors in college, it was too late to start recruiting. So what did we do? We went into middle school, and we went into elementary school. We provided counseling for parents of 5th graders in our district, and we got parents to start thinking about financial planning, about the cost of an education. We had counselors talking about the different academic and social needs of the students. We brought these 5th graders to our campus every semester so that they would become comfortable on the campus and not be afraid of what college would look like. We were thinking ahead about 10 years, about 5 to 10 years. Who are these students? In 2005, our students were not sitting in high school classrooms. They were in the 5th and 6th grade. And so we made that, we started that initiative to bring those students to campus sooner. We also created excitement, and that's something here. If you start talking to students at an early age, you can not only get them comfortable with the idea of college, but excited about the idea of coming. And that's what we did. We started in middle school, and that's what I say, when you look at the life cycle of a student, an Erie Community College student, you're going to start in elementary school. I won't go so back as to say when they're toddlers. We had toddler rock when I worked at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We may not have that here, but certainly when they're in elementary school, reach out to local school districts, to K-12 districts, reach out to families, but be planful in it. Know who your audience is and really show the community that you can provide that kind of assistance and that kind of support so that students get excited about it. The other thing we did was we partnered with local high schools, with our faculty, who mentored high school teachers, and we created college in the high school courses. We allowed students to come on campus to take courses, and we had dual enrollment. 3 options, post-secondary options, starting in the sophomore year of high school. And we were, and I'm so proud to say this 10 years later, we had the largest enrollment of any regional campus in the state of Ohio for high school students getting early college experience. And we had a pipeline because we had the 5th graders coming up. So where to begin? Start early. And how to continue now that you've got now that you've got their attention. Here again, expanding high school options for students. Dual enrollment is the one that is probably the most challenging because it takes the most work. If you're looking at dual enrollment opportunities, you have to have an engaged faculty here and an engaged faculty at the high school, and they have to work together. It can be the most powerful model if it's done well, and there isn't only one way to do it, but you have to have a real commitment on both the part of the school district and the faculty here. And so that's kind of a challenge that you have with it. Early college programs sometimes are a little bit easier if the students are coming to campus. And we provided transportation in Ohio so students could come to campus. So lots of different things to look at there. Make pathways to college seamless. No matter what system you used, in South Carolina we used something for all high school students. It was like DARS, but had a little different name. It had a name for South Carolina. But what we did in South Carolina was we created an online program for students. As soon as they registered to take a college class, as soon as they were dually enrolled, they could tell any school in the state of South Carolina and how that course would transfer. So there were no surprises. There were no secrets. If you started taking early college when you were a freshman in high school, you knew when you graduated what you would have. But we made it transparent. And we didn't tell them at the end of the day that, oh no, now that you're here, you have to take this over again. It was a seamless process. Again here, develop degree and certificate programs that are forward-looking. In 2028, 2029, what are students going to need when they graduate from college? What kind of degrees? Are we planning them now? Are we thinking about them now? Are there programs that we currently offer that maybe need to be revised and updated? Are there programs and certificates that we offer that need to be sunsetted? I know that's kind of a negative word, but sometimes it's necessary because it can open up something else that we hadn't thought about before. And here's something that I know is an ongoing discussion among SUNY right now. It's something I've been working on at Hudson Valley, and that's the micro-credential, the little credential, the little badge that can be credit or non-credit, that can be bundled together to create course credit. Two things that SUNY tells us about micro-credentials. They have to be flexible and they have to be portable. But what an opportunity, especially for some programs that may need a jump start. Maybe what they need is a micro-credential and not a whole extra year. Maybe we combine micro-credentials and we reach out to workforce and see what skills are needed. And after a student completes a few micro-credentials, maybe we package that into a couple of credit-bearing courses that will lead to a degree completion. There's all sorts of ways that micro-credentials can be used. And again, it's critical you understand your community, you know what their needs are, you know where the community's going, and you have a collaborative effort on campus. You know, this isn't Mary Ann telling the faculty what to do. This is the faculty understanding their curriculum, understanding what they need to continue to do to meet the needs of their students, and then to create opportunities for success. It's not the only answer, but it's another option. Okay, I saw this one with the Student Government Association, Be the Change. If you start looking at this life cycle, beginning at an early age and moving through high school and on to college, you will be the change in this community. Buffalo is not a small area. I know you have competition here from other institutions. How do you stand out? Well, academic and student affairs need to work together. Sometimes they work at odds with one another. That doesn't exclude the finance office or the Office of Advancement or any other unit on campus, but academic and student affairs should be working in lockstep on all of these initiatives. Implement student-friendly options that enroll, engage, and ensure success. What does your onboarding process look like today? How hard is it for students to enroll? How difficult is it for them to track their success? If you're bringing a student onto campus and you're invested in their success, you should create every possible way for them to stay current with their status, to seek the help they need and to know where to get it, and to keep them engaged. Enrollment is not the final answer, and getting the butt in the seat is not the last step. It's really the first. Experimental learning. One of the things that community colleges can do really well is work with what is usually called the non-traditional student. I'm not so sure there is a traditional student anymore, but if we call the adult learner a non-traditional student, what kinds of pedagogies, what kinds of opportunities are we creating for the adult learner? Let's go back to that fifth grader. Let's say that fifth grader comes and graduates and goes on to a four-year institution and is in the workforce. What are we providing for that student now? What happens to that student when they're 30 years old and they need some kind of training or professional development? Are we still there as a community college? We should be. That's the ongoing change that we can create in a student life cycle model. Designing programs with maximum flexibility using multiple modalities, back to online teaching and learning, hybrid opportunities, partnerships among the three campuses. I understand you're the trinity here, 3 campuses, 1 college. How well do you work together? Do you create opportunities for flexibility for students? Do departments on different campuses work well together? Are we invested in their success? So be that kind of change. And again, what all of this is really saying is you want to look beyond where you are right now. So here we are on September 24th, 2018. What do we want to be in 5 years? What do we want to be in 10 years? How far can we extend that vision? I apologize for that animation. I took it out of the my last version of this. But anyway, first of all, investing in faculty and staff development, professional development, whether it's going to an academic conference, whether it's learning how to teach online and having a baseline certification for all faculty who teach online. What about staff development? What are your deans doing? What are your department chairs doing? Do we understand our role on campus? And do we have all the support and all the tools that we can use to be successful? You know, the beauty about working on a college campus is that if you're really collaborating, there's bleed over into different areas, and it isn't all siloed, or it shouldn't be. But that said, whatever your role is and wherever you fit into the institution, do you have the skill and the support to do your job? Because if you don't, then SUNY Cares really doesn't. And you have to look at that element of it too. What are we doing for us that will help the students? Bouncing again, introducing new programs and sunsetting those that are no longer relevant. I've known that some institutions, if you bring in a new program, you have to sunset another one. An eye for an eye. I'm not sure that's always the best solution, but letting programs continue that have gone past their usefulness, their relevancy, their appropriateness for students is not an indication that you care. If you care about students and their success, you want to be able to offer them courses and programs that will help them in life, not things that don't matter anymore. And I'm a historian, so if I'm going to be the whipping child for sunsetting programs, I understand very often that people say, well, you know, what are you going to do with a history degree? Teach? There's lots you can do with a history degree. But how do you let students know that? How do you let students know that you can still be a history major and have a place in the workforce that is positive and productive and that you can make a contribution? So think about those things. What don't we need to do anymore? What new programs do we need? How can we add life and relevancy to the programs that we want to keep? Expanding partnerships, whether it's through articulation agreements or whether it's through partnering with local school districts, partnering with business and industry. When I was a dean in Chicago, we had a huge workforce development arm of the campus. And one of the things that the college was constantly doing was looking for new certificate programs, looking for new opportunities that we could introduce to students, and partnering specifically with business and industry, where we would go to their campus and offer programs. We had one I remember because it was in my area. There was a factory in the Chicago area that made gaskets. They didn't want us to teach their employees how to work. They wanted us to teach our employees how to work together. So the social science division, which I was the dean of, sent faculty there before work and after work for 2.5 years so that students could complete an Associate of Arts degree. They needed the soft skills, and we were able to provide that. So think about that. Think about all the places that you can continue to partner, those places you might want to partner in the future. And that, another way, is, you know, you're extending that life cycle, because now these are students in the workforce, and you're still capturing them. And the last item up there, use data-driven decision-making. Lots of places have great stories, and I've heard some really good stories today since I've been on campus about all the good work that's being done here. So I know that's true. But how do you show it? I had a conversation a couple weeks ago with faculty leadership, and they said, we have a lot of faculty that really reach out to students to make sure they're coming to class. And my question was, how do you know? Who keeps the data? I don't doubt that there are a lot of people doing really good things. But back to accountability. If you can't show it, how can you make an informed decision? So use the data, collect good data, collect useful data, and use that as a springboard for making informed decisions. And finally, got to track your progress. So it's like I told someone this afternoon, if you've got a strategic plan and you have strategic goals, it ought to be the dirtiest document on your desk because you should be looking at it all the time, spilling coffee and soda on it and really using it. It has to be a living document, but track your progress. And what happens if the progress isn't what you'd hoped? Reboot. Think about it. It's okay, right? We're not working in an exact science. So if you start an initiative, I had a question earlier today, what if we don't meet the 62% retention goal? And my question was, are you sure that's what you want to do? If you're not making the kind of progress that you think you should be making, ask yourself those questions. Maybe you need to tweak it. Maybe the number isn't accurate. Maybe you're not collecting the right data. Maybe there's a better way of getting at the kind of progress that you seek to have. So track it, question it, and if it's not working, go to plan B or C. Okay, so what's the takeaway with all this? Other than I held the microphone too close there. Start early with students. If you want to build a student life cycle, you have to be engaged in what they're doing early on. So think ahead 5 to 10 years. Get into the elementary schools. Talk to parents. Get students engaged on the campus and show them what an Erie Community College education can offer. And engage all the stakeholders. It's not just us. It's not just the schools. It's parents. It's the community. It's local businesses. Who are the stakeholders? If you had to make a list of all those who have a vested interest in the success of Erie Community College, they need to all be part of that conversation. Cultivate a community of lifelong learners. So maybe a student comes here for a year and goes to Harvard, and they become a big shot in Silicon Valley. That's great. But if they know how to learn, they'll remember this college. And they'll remember that this college still has something to offer. So reach out beyond. What are you doing for kids to bring them here? What are you doing for students to retain them when they get here? And what are you doing to get them to come back? What are you offering? This, I think, speaks to a bigger picture with the idea of SUNY Cares, and that's educating the whole person. When you talk about bringing children in when they're 10 or 11 years old to see the campus, and then enrolling them as students 5 years later, and then hoping they'll come back after they're working in the workforce, you're really talking about something more than just handing out diplomas. You're really talking about educating the whole person. Do you provide the academic support that students need? Do you have the counseling and social emotional network that sometimes adult learners need? You know, several years ago, I hadn't thought about this. We were looking at a GED program at Ohio University for some of our adults in the community. And we had a day set aside for the adults to come, and one of the adults had passed the GED, and they had been enrolled on the campus. And she was sitting in the classroom, and I went in to talk to her, and she was absolutely terrified. And her GED was fine. She was very bright, very able. I'd seen some of the things that she'd been working on. She brought her portfolio with her, and she was showing me. She was afraid of being in a class with 18-year-olds. Nobody thought about that. So what are we doing when we look at the whole person, not just the academic part? Because that, I think, if you're going to show compassion and put students first, you have to be thinking about educating the whole person. Oh, yes, encouraging collaboration. Again, campus-wide. It comes from the top down and the bottom up, and it meets in the middle, but it's engaged and it's productive. And it says that you have ownership of what you're doing, but you're not territorial. So we break down those silos. And again, establish relevant community continuing ed opportunities for students so that you've got these students in the 5th grade, they come here for college, they come back later on in life, they are engaged and hopefully invested in the success of Erie Community College. And you made a huge difference, not only in their individual lives, but in the life of the community. And that's pretty cool. And it's not a small task. But it's one of the things I have to say, when you look at community colleges versus 4 years, and I've worked in both, and there are pluses and minuses in both. When you look at private colleges and public schools, and I've worked in both, and there are pros and cons to working in both. The one thing that always comes back to me with a community college is that it really has the opportunity to stay in the life cycle of a student for beyond the 3 or 4 or 5 years that they might be enrolled in college. It really has the opportunity to make a difference in someone's life from the time they're in elementary school until way beyond their workforce life. And I think that's what makes them unique and really special. When I was in college, or before I started college, I had a 4-year scholarship to a private institution in Ohio, and I won't tell you where. But my dad took me there for orientation, and I hated it. I mean, I called my dad the next day and crying on the phone saying, "Dad, you got to come get me." He was not happy. But he did. He came back and he drove me back home. He didn't say one word to me the entire drive home. And the next morning, he came into breakfast and he said to me, "You have 2 choices. Get a job or go to Lorain Community College," which was our local community college in Ohio. So the next day I went with my dad and I enrolled in Lorain County Community College, and I went there for a year and a summer. I got all the credits I needed. I transferred to Oberlin. The only credit that didn't count was bowling. But that was all right. So I finished college in 3 years. And the one thing I can tell you is that to this day, some of the professors I had at Lorain County Community College are still people that I call on the phone or I visit whenever I'm in the part of the country where they're retired to. And they made a huge difference. They told this little kid from a blue-collar community that she could do anything she wanted, just like my dad did. So I know how important it is to go to a community college that cares. And it can make a huge difference. When I was 17 years old, I wasn't thinking I was going to be a college administrator. I was hoping I'd be a junior high teacher. And the world that was opened up to me in that 1 year that I went to a community college was huge. So, students first, a little different diagram, because it's not always linear, but it certainly is collaborative, and it definitely is inclusive. And hopefully, some of the things that I've shared with you this afternoon give you a sense of my notion of a student life cycle and how it would fit in to the SUNY Cares initiative. And I leave you with this quote here. To me, SUNY Cares means collaboration across campus and within the greater community in order to really establish student success. And someone shared this quote with me a couple weeks ago, and I think it makes a lot of sense, especially in light of this initiative. If you want to go faster, travel alone. If you want to go farther, travel together. And hopefully, that's what SUNY Cares will do. So, thank you for allowing me to share that with you. And I think we have questions, yes?
20 minutes for questions.
Okay, all right. Oh, it's just like school, isn't it? It's like nobody wants to go first. Yes. You all have very nice shoes.
Yeah, don't forget to use your mic. Okay. Since we had to turn it off, I'm sorry.
Oh, there, okay. As you mentioned, we are a 3-campus institution. So my question is, would you have a regularly scheduled working presence on each campus?
I would imagine so. And let me ask your name.
Oh, sorry, I forgot that part. Donna Fairley, Fine Arts South Campus.
Okay, very good. Yes, I would. I think I've worked in other institutions where there were multiple campuses or multiple sites. And that was something that I established early on, was making sure that there was a presence at whatever that looks like. You know, sometimes it was once a week, sometimes it was more, depending on what was going on. But I think it's important when you have 3 campuses, 1 provost in one location, to be able to get out and engage and talk with those individuals at other campuses. So absolutely. And as you know now, I'm from Cleveland, so the winters in Buffalo don't scare me. But yes, I would do that. And I think there's a lot of things too, and it's being on the campus, it's also being a part of what's going on, and not just showing up, but also engaging faculty and staff in conversations and finding out what their needs are and seeing how we can encourage greater collaboration among the 3 campuses. Mm-hmm. Yes.
What role should online education play, especially for an online curriculum? It seems to be very important. I think it is. And what would you suggest?
Well, I think online teaching and learning is here to stay, and it's not gonna go away. So, but there isn't only one way to do online teaching and learning. And I think the most critical thing is to understand what your students' needs are, what the college's resources are, and how you can bring those two together. An 18-year-old who's looking for an online course is going to navigate differently from a 35-year-old. So I think you need to understand who the online program is being directed to, who your audience is, who your students are, and what their needs are, so that you can tailor those programs as much as possible for student success. When I was at Stanford University and I headed up their online high school, that was a virtual school for gifted and talented high school students. But the courses were taught synchronously. So the students would meet twice a week with their instructor, and they could see each other, they could interact with each other, and they could interact with the instructor. So they used a flipped classroom approach to that. That worked for those students, and it worked for a couple of reasons. First of all, they were bright kids, so they could handle the self-motivation of doing assignments in between the courses. But many of the students that we had in the online high school were somewhere on the spectrum. And so for those students, being in a traditional bricks and mortar environment was not good. And what we provided them through the online high school was the opportunity to be at home and feel secure, but at the same time have social engagement and interaction with their peers. And we had everything but athletics at the online high school. Okay, so we had a robotics team, we had a debate team, we had ethics bowl, we had all sorts of things. But again, we tailored it based on, it was a niche, but that's where we tailored it. And I think at a community college, you have to look at those, where do you see the online programs being most successful? Who is your audience, and what are their needs going to be when you design those programs? And I think, for a lot of adult learners still, but that's going to change in the next 10 years, a lot of adult learners prefer hybrid to online. They like to have some interaction and then a lot of time to complete the work on their own. So it's finding that mix. And again, it's never going to be one thing for everybody, so you'll have to have multiple modalities when you do it. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Steve Smith, Enrollment Vice President. What attracts you to the position here versus the one at your home institution, your current one?
Well, I can't stay at the one in my home institution.
Okay.
I'm there for a finite period of time. But I think there's something here that resonates with me, and I told the search committee the first time I spoke to them, I'm looking for a capstone, a place where I can come and stay. And I can't do that where I currently am. I'm looking for an institution that hopefully needs the kind of leadership that I could provide in terms of collaboration, strategic planning, moving the college forward in terms of online programs, technology, the things that are really critical to success in the 21st century. The community is close. I've said this before to people, but Buffalo is close to Cleveland. I have family in Cleveland, so your location is not a small thing. It's very appealing. And the Buffalo community, as I've been familiar with it since I was a kid in one way or another, it's a very vibrant community, and so that's very attractive and appealing to me. But I think professionally, what I understand about the position and picking up the baton from someone who's been very successfully in this role for a very long time. It's not a question of coming in and just shaking things up and here's the new sheriff in town, but really listening You know, listening to where you've been, listening to where you need to go, and then as you need to rebuild, as you need to deconstruct and reconstruct, being able to do that. I like to do that. I'm in my element when I'm collaborating on exciting initiatives with faculty and staff, and letting people, I always say the best thing you can do as a provost is provide the resources to let other people do their jobs. If you can encourage that and you can inspire and empower people to do that, that's really what a provost at its core, what it should be. I started as a faculty member. I still think of myself as a faculty member. My classroom's changed over the years, you know, but I think in a good way. And if you can do that in a provost position and inspire people to make these wonderful things happen and give them the resources they need, I think that's a lot of, and this position at this time in the life cycle speaks to me in that way. And your mission statement and the SUNY Cares, I thought was, for me, you don't see that often at a community college. And it says something about understanding who you are and wanting to grow and be more with that. And that says a lot. Yes? Okay.
It's nice to hear you talk about collaboration. So you mentioned we are 3 campuses, so we're very diverse in demographic and student population, faculty and staff. Just what are some of your thoughts about services, the institution, in relation to diversity and worker culture?
Services specifically, do you have something in mind?
Support students, either we have a refugee population, we have international students, and then just again a broad-based impact.
Let me give you a real quick example of an initiative I did for, I'm a huge proponent. Everywhere I've been, I think one of the things I'm proudest of from institution to institution is either beginning or sustaining or growing a diversity initiative. So I grew up in a very diverse community, and so that's kind of in my DNA. But I will say that one of the things we did when I was in Ohio, the campus was not in a very diverse area. And our service area was 98.5% white. So we reached out. We had a center of excellence near Columbus, Ohio. And because of 2 faculty members who were very engaged in inclusion and wanted to reach out to underrepresented students and provide some type of academic opportunity and success for them, we got a little bit of grant money, and we created a cohort. We started with 30 students. All of them were underrepresented. All of them were ready, college ready. And we had each student enrolled in the Intro to Psych and Intro to Communications course with the 2 faculty members. The director of our Center for Excellence worked with the students on activities that were not academic, social activities, and there were opportunities for students to talk to each other and talk about what it was like and what their experience was like when they were on campus. I worked with their parents. And at the end of the first quarter, out of 30 students, we lost 1. So our retention was pretty good. And the students and their families asked us to continue doing that. And out of that initiative, we grew a larger diversity initiative where we engaged some of our campus faculty in working within the community to find out what the students' needs were, both academic and otherwise, and we continued to grow and build those programs. And the best thing I can tell you about it is today, the program is still there. The faculty member I asked to head it up is still doing it. She's tenured now. And it's one of the things I think I'm proud of, because we had a community that wasn't very diverse, and bringing the concept of diversity in was a challenge unto itself. But then going beyond that and really looking at listening, you know, to what the needs of the students were and developing programs and opportunities in that way was a huge plus. So, sure. We can talk more. I could talk about that a lot. I just find there are so many wonderful opportunities in a region like this to reach out that I'd be curious to hear more about what you already do. Any other questions?
Okay. Okay. I think I already said who I was. So I think there is a way that community colleges can work harder at bringing in the community. And sometimes I think for that to happen, there's a way that not only does the approach need to be designed, but sometimes the actual campuses in the space need to be redesigned as facilities to accommodate that. And I'm just curious if you know of any models where the community is an integral part of the community college. I can use my campus as an example. The students are there from 8 till maybe 2. It's a wasteland mostly after that. There's no reason it couldn't be used for after-school programs, tutoring for math for parents and kids, book clubs, movie nights. And it wouldn't take much to do it, but do you know of models? Do you think that kind of engagement is valuable?
Oh gosh, yes, it is valuable, and I can give you a couple models. The one that comes to mind is my alma mater, Lorraine Community College, because if you were to have taken a photo of that school when I went there, and take a look at it now, it is so vastly different, not just in terms of size, but what it does within the community. Shortly after I left the college, they built a theater, and that theater grew so that there, not only did they have movie night and lectures, but they had productions, and then people were coming to campus for things other than classes. They've also grown in their partnerships with a lot of four-year institutions, so in terms of meeting the community need, a student can go to Lorraine Community College on that campus in Elyria, Ohio, and they can get a 4-year degree from Cleveland State or Ashland or Bowling Green because they have a presence on the campus, and the students never have to leave home. Some of the courses are online now, but still they can come to campus and they don't have to travel around or relocate, and they can still get a degree, so it's had that kind of vibrancy. They also have programs now. I've had this at other places where I've been too, but opportunities for K-12 students throughout the year, after school, and theater workshops, art workshops, things like that, particularly a lot in the fine arts, but in technical areas too, where you partner with a K-12 school system and there's some place for students to go or some other opportunities for them during the academic year and then in the summer. So I think there's a lot you can do with it. Again, you have to look at what your facilities are like and what you can offer. And if you have a really huge initiative, you can always grow that. Lorraine County Community College for me is a good example because there was no theater there. They were always, it was a classroom design that was built in 1963. And by 1980, they realized they had to do more for the community. And just the presence of that theater on campus made a difference. I just was in your STEM building too, which is very, very impressive, very nice. And again, lots of opportunities there with STEM that you can, with that building and with the facilities. When I was in Minnesota, we had a program. We reached out to the local school district to provide professional development for all elementary teachers in STEM areas. Because if you look at the data, most elementary teachers are still women, and most elementary teachers are scared of science, math, and the STEM areas. So we started with STEM, we moved to STEAM, we included the arts in that, but we provided professional development certification for elementary school teachers so they would develop some confidence in teaching the STEM areas and also help to get them to design pedagogy so they could bring that back to the classroom. It was a simple little thing, but it was huge. And we were able to get some very nice grant money to support that, so it worked out very well. But yeah, I think there's a lot of good conversation for how you can reach out. And the other part of that, because there's another side to that, you can't just have the building, you have to market it. I know that sometimes is a 4-letter word in education, but you really do. You have to let people know that you're doing it. You don't want to be the best kept secret in Buffalo if you're doing good things. So you really do have to market it, and somewhat aggressively.
Any other questions? All right, Marianne, thank you so much for your time and coming and doing this great presentation.
Thank you.